Hey friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Jamie and today we are talking about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Okay, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a literary fiction novel in a contemporary setting, or semi-contemporary. It takes place starting in the 90s and then it goes throughout the early 2010s, so decently contemporary. And this follows the story of our two main characters, Sam and Sadie, as they go throughout their lives together, making and creating their own video game company. Sadie and Sam are best friends, but there is always a constant level of tension where we are unsure of whether or not they're ever going to be romantic partners, but the majority of the book is about their friendship, which is a really refreshing change of pace. I feel like you don't really get too many books about male and female friendship, and they are best friends. They met when they were children, and this story spans 30 or so years following their first meeting all the way through the creation of their video game company. There's a couple of other characters as well that become more and more important, and so overall this is the story of the company, of this friendship, and just about the ups and downs that they face in their lives and how they learn to overcome them together. I have seen so much high praise for this. When this came out, the reviews were absolutely glowing. 5 stars all around, so what did I think of it? I thought that this was a well-written, engaging literary fiction novel that definitely does a good job of distinguishing the voices of its two characters and making those characters feel really real. I also felt that this was very easy to read. Despite it being 400 pages, it definitely moves very quickly. The pacing is really well done, and I didn't ever feel bored. I felt that I always was moving along with the story. Nothing felt stagnant. So for that, it was very entertaining to read. I did enjoy this book, but I don't think it's necessarily flawless like it's being talked about. I think that this book is trying to be something in the vein of like an Anthony Doerr or maybe like an Emily St. John Mandel. I could see those kinds of authors being the inspiration for this book. Which, if you know anything about my reading taste, that makes it a perfect story for me. I really like those kinds of sweeping literary fiction stories about a singular person or a couple people, their life, and just the messages that are taught to us through just existing in the world. So this was a book that really was kind of designed to be loved by me anyway. That being said, I don't think that this quite reaches the level of something like All the Light We Cannot See, which I did feel that there was some similarity. They're not anything alike conceptually, but it had the same feeling that I felt when I read that book, and the writing style, I think, with some important distinctions, did feel in that vein. The thing about this book is that the main characters are kind of geniuses, or at the very least, one of them is a prodigy in this specific field of video game design, and she's really, really smart. And whenever you're talking about characters that are genius, or they're talking about a character who has created a piece of art that was really impactful and really powerful, there does tend to be some sort of feeling within the book that the book itself needs to be treated as like, this is the smartest thing in the room, if you know what I mean. And I do feel like what this book does is it tries pretty hard to convince you that it's smart. It's an important message. These characters are smart. Like, it does everything in its power to make that happen, and the result is just kind of a lot of big words thrown in the middle of sentences, which I think is a little bit of a distraction of like look, this is really good intellectual writing because it uses so many big words. So I don't know if that's a little like over the top or ostentatious. That might annoy some readers if you don't like that kind of writing style. Like, it is obviously trying really hard to be literary fiction. It's the kind of writing style that I like. So once I kind of, in the first chapter I was laughing a little bit, like, okay, I see what we're doing here. Like, we're using the really big words to make the whole thing feel more intellectual, but I actually got over that feeling pretty quickly, and then I kind of started going with the flow of the writing, and then I was really enjoying it. So just something to be aware of if you find it very annoying when there's just an overuse of overly dramatic or intellectual writing style. It sticks out at first, but I think it really, like, as the book goes on, it kind of like comes down a little bit. This book is also largely about art itself and the process of making art, being an artist, what it means to have a successful piece of art, and kind of the difference between commercial success and a personal definition of success, and something that's popular versus something that is art, and the connection between the two, and the very murky, undefined world that lives in between those two things. So this is really a book that's exploring art. So if that is a message that you are interested in, or a theme that you're interested in, I think this one does a lot of interesting things with it. And I think it actually goes in some directions that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but that I thought were really interesting if you're talking about success and art as themes. And on the note of themes, I will say that part of also what makes this book kind of, sound like it is trying really hard to be literary and important and that kind of thing is that it tries to put a lot of themes into this story. Again, we have a book that is just trying to cover a lot of ground, and actually I think that this one covers it pretty well. I think that Zevin captures the pieces of each theme that she wants to really well. I feel like she picks the things that actually are important to the story and to the characters. It doesn't necessarily feel out of place, but a lot of things, a lot of personal tragedies happen to these characters, and so it does feel like we're trying to kind of like hit all of these themes, but at the same time the story is actually engaging enough and very convincing enough that I'm willing to overlook it, even though that is something that is a huge pet peeve of mine in other stories when authors just try to cram every single issue that they want to talk about into one story. I do feel like in this setting and for these characters specifically, I felt like she was able to make it work pretty well. And this book actually features a protagonist with a disability, which I think is not only something that is pretty underrepresented in novels, but also it gives that character's motivations such just a deeper and more profound kind of edge to them, I guess, because you really understand why he wants to do what he's trying to do. And at the same time, the story remains really respectful to the community that it's speaking to, at least in my opinion. And I feel like it will be really cathartic for a lot of people in that community to feel and see themselves represented in this novel. One other positive that I will note that I thought was actually just really well done in the writing was that, yes, this is about video games, but you really don't need to have much knowledge of video games to be able to follow this story really easily. I mean, I've played a handful of video games. I understand the concepts. I understand what some of the big ones are, obviously. But I didn't have any like super deep knowledge of video games, and I still found this super easy to follow. But what was really fun actually was that it definitely does get pretty technical at times. And I just felt that that was so much fun because it felt real. It felt like, even though I didn't understand what they were doing, I could understand the logic of what they were saying about the process of building a video game, which was just really fun. And it's pretty obvious that Gabrielle Zevin is a lifelong gamer, and actually in the back of the book she has notes and moments from her years of writing the story, and she does mention that she loved to play video games. And it's obvious, like, this speaks really passionately to the world of video games. And again, like I said, just the two characters are so distinct in their voice and their emotions, and you can really feel their love for video games, and you can feel the author's love as well. But yeah, it's about video games, but it's not really about video games. It's really about the relationship between our protagonists, Sam and Sadie, and the many directions that it goes throughout the course of their life. And I did enjoy my time with this a lot. I would give it 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it does not quite reach the height of some similar modern classic literary fiction novels in this vein, but I definitely think that there was a ton of good stuff in here. I thought that it was fun to read, and I really enjoyed my time with it. And while there are some tragic things that happen within the story, I felt that overall it was just a quite joyous book. I felt that for the most part, the characters and the story were very hopeful and just delightful, and reading this on vacation was great. So I would recommend this for someone who is looking for a very emotional story, but that is not so overwhelmingly sad or dealing with something like a really hard subject matter. This, I think, is a couple steps above kind of just like a modern contemporary fiction, but it's not quite getting to the point where it's impossible to follow or really kind of like overly intellectual. This is just a very easy, fun to read story about a friendship, and I found it really entertaining. Well, there you have it. That is my review of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read this or if you are planning to read this. I had a good time with it, and I hope you do as well, and I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.